The BBC apologises to Amanda Abbington over her troubled time at Strictly. The long-awaited internal report by the broadcaster found the actor had suffered verbal bullying and harassment from her professional dance partner, Giovanni Panice. But allegations of physical assault were not, it seems, upheld.
Confidentiality needs to be respected out of fairness to everybody involved. But of course, we're also trying to balance that with the desire to be open and to be transparent.
Both parties claim that they are satisfied with the outcome of the report. Ms Abbington feeling vindicated over her decision to complain. Giovanni Panice, for his part, saying he is simply relieved. So, are we any nearer then knowing exactly what went on? Also tonight. In Lebanon, Hezbollah braces for an Israeli ground invasion. Could it happen as soon as tonight?
You know, it is a sad, sad day. People will lose their jobs.
The last blast for Port Talbot as the final steel furnace closes. The end of an industrial era in Wales. Evidence of a second faulty system at the post office. Another group of postmasters out of pocket and calling foul. Ocean-bound, at last, a venture finally beckons for surely the most patient passengers ever.
We're all going to have fond places in our hearts for Belfast. We'll be back, probably in about 3.5 years.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. The BBC has been forced to apologise today over the scandal at its flagship entertainment programme, Strictly Come Dancing. An internal report found that actor Amanda Abbington had been subjected to verbal bullying and harassment at the hands of professional dance partner Giovanni Panice in last year's show. But it is not thought any allegations of physical assault were upheld. In response, Amanda Abbington, who starred in Sherlock and Mr Selfridge, said the apology had vindicated her decision to come forward. She said it hadn't been easy, though, and she and her family had been subjected to online abuse and threats. Giovanni Panice, for his part, said he was relieved at the findings. Here's our entertainment reporter, Rashid Avda.
The famous glitter ball has lost its sparkle in recent months. As Strictly Come Dancing sat under a cloud of controversy when, despite the smiles we saw on screen, allegations of bullying and abusive behaviour were levelled at former pro Giovanni Panice by his celebrity partner Amanda Abbington. The pair danced in 2023, but today, after months of investigating her accusations, the BBC disclosed its findings, saying, "We have assessed the complaints and we have upheld some, but not all of the complaints made. We want to apologise to Amanda Abbington and to thank her for coming forward and taking part. We know this would not have been an easy thing to do." The broadcaster added that at the time, although the production team took steps to address the issues as they understood them, ultimately, these were not enough. ITV News understands the review looked into 17 complaints. 6 of them, relating to verbal bullying and harassment, were upheld. The rest, including the more serious allegations of physical aggression, weren't. The BBC choosing not to disclose specific details.
Confidentiality needs to be respected out of fairness to everybody involved. But of course, we're also trying to balance that with the desire to be open and to be transparent about the way our complaints processes work.
Earlier this year, Amanda Abbington said many were fearful to speak up about their time on the show.
I think women are very scared to say something and stick their head above the parapet for fear of being not believed or being ridiculed or being told they're overreacting. I've spoken to several women who won't come forward because of that.
Responding to the review, the actor said the BBC's apology is vindication of her complaint for her and others who've experienced similar treatment. Giovanni Panice, who always denied the claims, had his say too.
Sometimes you get frustrated, as a teacher, as a dancer, as a performer. Today I'm happy because, at the beginning there were very, very serious allegations thrown at me, but I think today none of the serious allegations been upheld.
The review did still uphold 6 of the complaints against him, but in a strange turn of events, both the actor and the dancer seem pleased with its outcome.
OK, both seem pleased, both seem satisfied. Is this, therefore, the end of the whole business?
I think the BBC bosses will hope that the scandal is over because the show's been in the headline for all the wrong reasons recently. You might remember that after Giovanni Panice left the show in May, Graziano Di Prima was then sacked for admitting to kicking his former dance partner, Zoe McDermott. That led to a conversation about training techniques of the professionals, and some were questioning whether workplace culture in general strictly needed to be looked at. Well, the BBC tell me there's currently no investigations or no reviews into anything happening in Strictly Come Dancing or on the show, and they say that actually they think that the new duty of care rules they've introduced, including chaperones within the training rooms, will ensure that these allegations don't happen again in the future. OK, we should have to thank you.
Well, let's move on now to events in the Middle East, where a ground invasion of Lebanon by Israeli forces looks imminent tonight. Sources quoted in the United States media report ground troops could invade as soon as tonight. Now, the United Nations has said that so far 100,000 people have fled Lebanon through its border into Syria, and steps are being taken to evacuate some British citizens and other foreign nationals. It came as Israeli airstrikes continued, with central Beirut targeted for the first time, a place where many fleeing civilians thought that they would be safe. From Beirut, our international editor Emma Murphy has the latest.
On the border with Lebanon, Israel is amassing its military and machinery. There is a sense that it is now only a short time until this air war becomes a land war. From the Defence Minister, a reminder of the mission and potentially a rally cry for what is ahead.
Nasrallah is a very important step, but that is not all. We will use all the capabilities we have, and if someone does not understand what is meant on the other side, all capabilities are all capabilities.
A ground invasion would change the dynamic of this war and be potentially ruinous to both sides. Undeterred by the assassination of its leader in command, Hezbollah continues to promote an image of military strength and defiance. The rally cry to its troops, our fight continues.
We are prepared if the Israelis decide to enter by land. The resistant forces are ready for a ground engagement.
Overnight, Israel expanded its air operation to target 3 senior Palestinian leaders, not Hezbollah members, in an apartment building in Beirut.
Every day brings some form of escalation. The location of the strike here is what's significant. It is not in the southern suburbs, it's in central Beirut and far from Hezbollah's territory.
In the south, they're still trying to find the dead and injured from one of the most lethal strikes. 45 people died here, with at least 70 harmed. As he wages war in Lebanon, the Israeli Prime Minister is talking peace to the people of Iran.
Iran's tyrants don't care about your future, but you do. When Iran is finally free, and that moment will come a lot sooner than people think, everything will be different. Our 2 ancient peoples, the Jewish people and the Persian people, will finally be at peace.
The menace of what would lie between war and peace is likely to cause consternation in capitals around the world. Emma Murphy, ITV News, Beirut.
Well, over the past 48 hours, the conflict in the Middle East has intensified. As we've heard in Emma's piece, more targets in Lebanon were struck overnight, including in central Beirut, where a residential building was hit. Over the weekend, Israeli airstrikes struck the southern suburbs of Beirut, as well as the Bekaa Valley in the east. Hezbollah has directed a smaller number of strikes towards Israel, which it has intercepted. Yesterday, Israel widened its strikes in the Middle East when it bombed a port in Yemen in response to missile attacks from Houthi militants. The Houthi forces, like Hezbollah, are backed by Iran. But it is, as ever, civilians who continue to suffer most from the fighting. In Lebanon, officials say more than 1,500 people have been killed and up to 1 million are believed to have been displaced. The UK government says it's doing everything it can to help Brits leave the country. From Beirut, here's our correspondent, John Ray.
As surely as if she were still in the way of Israeli missiles, Yara's life is in peril. She is now in the relative safety of Beirut, but far from the doctors who treat an illness that requires constant care. If Yara can't take the right medicine, I'm afraid she will die, her father tells me. But everyone would rather take their chances here than in the homes they left in southern Lebanon, on the war's front line.
They are bombing everywhere, even along the road. It was dangerous to leave, but we cannot stay in the place we live any longer.
This school now shelters 150 children. The playground echoes to their laughter, but the sound of explosions haunts them.
They are afraid. Any sound, the sound of the door, they will be panicked. They have panic attacks.
They think it's a missile?
Yes, yes.
This family tells us they feel safer under the skies than in any building. Across the city there are makeshift camps like this. By an official reckoning, 1 million people have been forced from their homes and are being pushed to the limits of their endurance. Emma Bartholomew has watched the city she loves attacked time and again.
Heartbreaking doesn't even come close to how it feels, to be honest.
She has a flight home booked, but like thousands of British citizens here, worries the war will arrive before her plane can take off.
Currently, there's no option for me to leave on a boat. There is no option for me to safely leave by road because some of the routes have been hit.
As far as you know, is there an evacuation plan for British citizens like you?
No, there is nothing in place.
Here, there are survivors of every Israeli-Lebanese war. Hussein says this might be the worst. This time the Israelis think they'll win. Only God can tell, he says. And there is little else left for them to put their trust in.
OK, well, let's go straight to John then, who is still in Beirut tonight. Let's return to the warnings first of an Israeli ground invasion of Lebanon, John. We've been on this precipice before, haven't we? So how likely is it that we'll actually see troops and tanks cross the border?
Well, look, it seems certain tonight that what was for so long almost unthinkable is more or less upon Lebanon now. Our own sources at ITV News are telling us that last night Israeli forces, special forces, mounted an operation just across the border. And tonight in America, Israeli officials are briefing their counterparts there that a ground offensive is imminent, perhaps as soon as tonight, though they are saying it will be a limited operation, limited to hitting Hezbollah infrastructure along that border area. But two big words of warning, Mary. First of all, the Israelis in the past have been very flexible in their use of that word, limited. And secondly, big wars have a habit of starting small. Much now depends on what capability Hezbollah have left to fight. Do they still have the fighters? Do they still have the weapons? If the answer to those questions is yes, then Israel's confidence and the stability of this region will again be put to a very severe test.
John Ray in Beirut, thank you. Well, here, steelmaking has finally come to an end at the Tata plant in Port Talbot, calling time on more than 100 years of history and with the loss of 2,000 jobs. The company started winding up operations today at Blast Furnace number 4 at the UK's largest steel plant. In its place will come a greener electric furnace, which is being built now, but it will take some time until it's finished and will need fewer workers to operate it. From the plant, Ellie Pitt reports.
The steelworks have been part of the South Wales skyline for 70 years. The furnaces are as much part of the landscape as the rolling hills and valleys. But today, the last of them has stopped, as steel production here is shut down. Chris is one of nearly 2,000 plant workers who don't know if they still have a job.
It is a sad, sad day. My wife has been my rock. You know, she supports me and helps me as well, and we try and keep it away from the children as much as we can.
Anthony works at Tata Steel with his 2 sons. He's not on shift today, but felt he had to be there.
Steelworks has been part of my life. You know, playing in the streets when I was a kid. The blast furnaces in the background and everything, and the noises of heavy industry is part of my life. It's a sad day.
Tata have decided to stop making steel the traditional way because it uses large amounts of polluting coal. Instead, they're building a new furnace on this part of the site that will be greener by creating steel from scrap metal. But they will need fewer workers, and there is a bleak feeling of what that means for Port Talbot.
Everybody's jobs are going to go. Everybody. It's going to be a ghost town.
There won't be many families that won't be affected.
And in the spring of 1947, clearance of the site began.
The steelworks was the largest in Europe when it opened.
There you are. Pretty fine site, isn't it?
And employed around 20,000 staff during its heyday in the 1960s.
On the blast furnace.
Which is when John Warman was working on the blast furnace that's closed down today.
At one time, there were 2 casinos in Port Talbot, so it just goes to show that there was good money there. I just had to be here today just to say wave goodbye to this furnace.
At 5 o'clock this evening, a dark plume signalled that the furnace had stopped, closing a chapter in the history of this steel town story. There are thousands of Tata Steel workers hoping tonight that this isn't the end of their story with the company, and they're expecting to find out about the future of their job in the next couple of days. Indeed, the CEO has said that this is a transition period as the company moves away from those coal-intensive ways of making steel to greener methods. But there is a heavy sense of emotion and sadness from those we've heard from today that the way they've been doing things for decades here has come to an end.
Ellie Pitts in Port Talbot, thank you. Well, there is plenty more still to come in the ITV Evening News, including the post office scandal which came before Horizon. A report into a second software is revealed.
I actually said on 2 occasions, I think there's something wrong with the capture software. And again, he shut me down. This is only happening at your office.
Also, should you switch or fix? And what can you do tonight to save money ahead of the energy price cap rise? And spared jail, a 96-year-old woman convicted of dangerous driving after she killed one pensioner and injured another. And that is all coming up after the break. See you then. Hello again, welcome back. A computer accounting system used by sub-postmasters before the faulty Horizon IT system also showed falsely cash shortfalls. That is the finding of the government-commissioned independent report called Capture. The software was riddled with bugs and led to some sub-postmasters having to make up the money themselves. Chloe Keedy reports.
Righto. The horrors of Horizon were documented in the now famous ITV drama.
Oh my God, it's just doubled right in front of my eyes.
But now a second software system, predating Horizon, has been officially linked to the scandal. Another set of sub-postmasters with stories that sound horribly familiar.
So when the capture system did eventually come in, we welcomed it in a way.
Lee Bowerman thought the new capture software would make his life easier, but soon started noticing shortfalls at his branch in Gwent in Wales.
When I started to flounder, with these losses, I felt I must be the missing link somehow, what is going on here?
How much money are we talking? What kind of loss?
We're estimating we lost about £60,000 in 4 years.
Lee didn't know that just a few miles away, Steve was having the same problem. He told me about a meeting he had with his post office manager.
I actually said on 2 occasions, I think there's something wrong with the capture software. And again, he shut me down. This is only happening at your office. I lost my home. I lost my dignity. I lost my standing in the community. put me in a position where I had a 2-year-old son that I struggled to take to the park, take him swimming, done everything with him, ruined my life.
A government report has now concluded it's a reasonable likelihood that capture was to blame. As dozens of sub-postmasters gathered to hear its findings, Ken Tooby watched remotely on behalf of his late wife June. She was sued by the post office for £55,000 over losses at her branch that she always maintained were caused by the software.
So she was right. She was right and they were wrong. So I would think she would say, I'm would.
The Post Office says it supports the capture investigation and is determined that wrongs must be put right. For sub-postmasters and their families, that must now begin with compensation, exonerations, and for some, a chance to finally move on. Chloe Keedy, ITV News.
A 96-year-old woman who struck and killed another pensioner when her car mounted a pavement has been spared jail today. June Mills admitted causing death by dangerous driving when she killed 76-year-old Brenda Joyce in Merseyside in August last year. Sentencing Mills today, a judge described it as an utter tragedy. Well, North of England reporter Amy Welch is outside Liverpool Crown Court. Amy, the judge decided then that prison was not appropriate in this case.
That's right. The judge said it wouldn't profit anybody to send 96-year-old June Mills to prison and that it was common sense to instead hand her an 18-month suspended sentence. She pleaded guilty to causing death by dangerous driving here 5 weeks ago, and today she was actually wheeled into court in a wheelchair by her husband and sat in front of the dock with a tartan blanket over her knee. The court heard how it was in August last year that her Vauxhall Corsa mounted the curb in Formby, killing 76-year-old Brenda Joyce and injuring her friend 80-year-old Jennifer Ensor. Her defence said she'd placed too much force on the accelerator, but she couldn't explain why, and said she'd panicked and that she then failed to react. Well, Brenda Joyce's family weren't in court today and they have not supported this prosecution, but Mills was wheeled out of court in that wheelchair by her husband, who told me how relieved he was that today is over.
We're just devastated. It was a terrible, terrible accident.
Well, Mills has been disqualified from driving for 5 years and handed a £1,500 fine. But this case does raise questions over whether it's really safe for somebody in their 90s to be driving. You are required to renew your driving licence at the age of 70 and then to self-declare that your health and eyesight meets a certain standard. If your doctor feels that it doesn't, they can tell the DVLA, but the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents is very much against any sort of age ban. They believe that all people should be declared medically fit to drive regardless of their age, and they should be required to do extra tests. And they also advise that if you are worried about a loved one's state of driving, you should have that conversation with them regardless of how difficult it might be.
Amy Welsh in Liverpool, thank you. Well, let's have a look at some other bits of news now. The National Education Union members have voted to accept the government's 5.5% pay rise for teachers in England. 95% of members who responded to a Snap poll voted to accept the pay offer. It follows 8 days of strike action last year. And a detective sergeant, 3 officers and a police staff member at the Met are to face disciplinary proceedings over the David Carrick investigation. Carrick was jailed for 30 years in February last year after he pleaded guilty to multiple charges of rape and sexual assault. The Independent Office for Police Conduct said staff members allegedly breached police standards of professional behaviour. Now, make sure you take a note of your meter readings tonight, because tomorrow we're all going to be hit by much higher energy prices. The energy cap goes up from midnight, putting an extra £150 on the average annual household bill. And our consumer editor Chris Choi is here. what changes are we all going to see? I mean, I know it's going up, but what's it actually going to mean?
Temperatures down, bills up. Let me go through the grim details for you here. Look, a typical annual bill goes from £1,568 to £1,717 for 27 million homes. That's a 10% rise. Just, of course, as millions of pensioners are losing their winter fuel payments worth up to £300. So, look, is it time to fix and switch? We were told of around 10 deals that could save you money based on these new prices. And here are some details from Ben Galizzi, who's an energy expert.
Which today you may be able to save around £100, which is not insignificant, bearing in mind the overall cost of living crisis we've got at the moment. So it's absolutely worth at least running an energy comparison if you're on a standard variable deal and seeing what fixed deals are out there.
Here we are, look.
Lovely.
A cosy jacket. It's not for me, it is for a hot water cylinder. It costs about £30 and saves about £30, so well worth getting. Here is Cara Gemble with some more energy saving tips.
An easy way to reduce the amount of time that your clothes take to dry is to throw in a clean, dry towel with the load. And research has shown that this can actually reduce the time it takes to dry your clothes by as much as a half an hour.
That's my tip of the day. I had no idea.
Remarkable.
Just a clean, dry towel.
Yeah.
Now, as you mentioned earlier, if you don't have a smart meter, but you are affected by these price rises, it is a really good idea to take a meter reading and send it in. That is simply to make sure you're not paying over the odds for any units that you use before midnight tonight.
OK, good tips. Thanks, Chris. Well, you are watching the ITV Evening News. It is pretty much exactly 7 o'clock, and here's what's still ahead. The race for the Tory leadership intensifies at the party's annual conference. Philip Schofield returns to television tonight for what he says will be the final time.
The thing is, I don't care anymore. I don't care. This is me having my say as I bow out.
Harry flies home. Why he's here, who he'll be seeing, and who he won't.
Feeling good was easy, Lord, when Bobby sang the blues.
Remembering Chris Christopherson, the country music legend, has died at the age of 88.
And after a wet start, brighter conditions are expected by midweek. But for how long? Join me for a look at this week's forecast later in the programme.
OK, all of that still to come. But first, the biggest ever coroner's investigation will start next week, looking into scores of women who died after being treated by the breast surgeon Ian Patterson. Now, he is currently serving a 20-year jail sentence for wounding women by carrying out unnecessary and unapproved procedures. The joint inquest will examine the deaths of at least 62 of the surgeon's former patients, and it may be broadened still further to include even more women. As Stacey Foster reports, it is another step on the long path to justice for relatives and victims of Patterson.
There's dark moments, I think, for all ladies who are diagnosed as having breast cancer. But I think once they come through it, the support group really helps them to realise that there is life after this diagnosis. They get their life back.
He was, at one time, the reassuring voice after a devastating diagnosis. But Ian Patterson's breast cancer surgery is now at the centre of one of the largest coroner's investigations in British history, looking at whether his treatment was actually a death sentence. Kathy Corner, mum of two, was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2002. More than 20 years later, her husband Stuart has learned that Ian Patterson could be to blame.
I suddenly got a letter from Birmingham and Solihull coroner saying that they were looking into the death of my late wife.
What was your reaction?
I was amazed, I was gobsmacked. She died believing that everybody associated with the treatment had done the best for her.
It's believed Ian Patterson carried out a so-called cleavage-sparing mastectomy, where breast tissue was left behind, increasing the risk of Kathy's cancer returning, which it did. She died in 2008. Concerns were raised following a review in 2014, but Stewart was never told.
It's upsetting, and it takes a long time to begin to get over that. And yet, here we are 10 years on from that report, and we're only just getting to circumstances where the inquest for my wife is about to take place.
Ian Paterson treated more than 11,000 patients in the NHS and private hospitals in the West Midlands between 1998 and 2011. In April 2017, he was found guilty of wounding 10 patients in the private sector by exaggerating or inventing their risk of cancer to carry out unnecessary operations, including mastectomies on women who didn't even have breast cancer. A month later, he was jailed for 15 years, but that was increased to 20 years on appeal. 3 years later, an inquiry into the scandal was published, which made 15 recommendations to government, including a greater sharing of information between the NHS and private sector.
You'll cry.
Debbie Douglas campaigned for that inquiry after discovering that her treatment was totally unnecessary. She says all of the recommendations have still not been implemented, and crucially, the group set up to do it haven't met for more than a year.
People can get away with it because they're allowed to get away with it. The governance isn't there, the controls aren't there.
Has enough changed since the Bishop's inquiry?
Absolutely not. The 15 recommendations have not been fully implemented. They haven't met since January 2023, so that's how seriously they're taking it. They're not looking at it.
Mr. Patterson, have you got anything to say to your former patients? Any reasons why? All they want to know is why, Mr. Patterson. The day before he was jailed, Ian Patterson refused to answer my questions about his actions. And now, 7 years later, there are many more being asked. Last week, the coroner opened another 8 inquests into the deaths of women who were operated on by Ian Patterson who died of breast cancer. That brings the total to 62 cases, but the coroner confirmed that his team are still investigating another 20 deaths. The inquests will conclude in 2026. The verdicts could lead to more charges against Patterson or other individuals and organisations. Are you sorry, Mr. Patterson? As things stand, Patterson is eligible for release from prison in May 2027 after serving half of his sentence. Stacey Foster, ITV News.
Okay, let's get an update now on what is making the news tonight. The actress Amanda Abbington has called the BBC's apology over complaints of bullying on Strictly Come Dancing a vindication. The organisation said it upheld some, but not all, of her complaints about partner Giovanni Panice. Panice has said that he is relieved by the findings. The last coal-fired blast furnace at Tata Steel Steelworks in Port Talbot has shut down. Steelworkers this afternoon drilled a hole in the furnace wall, marking the end of more than 100 years of history. And in the last hour, the US State Department has confirmed it has been notified by Israel that the IDF will carry out a limited ground incursion into Lebanon, but said it was not aware of when the operation would begin. The UK's top civil servant, Simon Case, has announced he will resign at the end of the year on health grounds. Well, our political correspondent, Romilly Weeks, is in Westminster. And Romilly, Mr Case is at pains to say that this is purely on health grounds, absolutely nothing else.
Yes, Mary, that's certainly what he's saying, and it has been known for some time that he is ill. He has a neurological condition and he had been expected to stand down in the new year. In his resignations letter, he says rather pointedly, "It's a shame that I have to spell this out, but my decision is solely to do with my health and nothing to do with anything else," because, of course, there have been many pretty damaging and bruising spats at the heart of government recently, with leaks about the Prime Minister and about his Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, and the fingers have been pointed pretty squarely at Simon Case, with some cabinet ministers even saying privately that he should go. Other sources I've spoken to in government have suggested that actually he's more of a convenient fall guy, but it is certainly true that there has been a pretty dysfunctional atmosphere at the centre of government while he's been in charge of the civil service. He also came under some scrutiny during Boris Johnson's time, when he was supposed to be leading the inquiry into parties in Number 10 during lockdown, when in fact it then emerged that there had been a party also organised by his office. The advert for his replacement has already gone up, a salary of £200,000, which is more than the Prime Minister and more than Sue Gray, in case you were wondering.
I certainly was. Romilly, thank you. Well, staying with politics now, and Conservative leadership hopeful Kemi Badenoch today insisted she wants to make life comfortable for people who are starting families. It follows her controversial comments yesterday at the Tory party conference, where she appeared to suggest that maternity pay was too high. From Birmingham, here's our political correspondent, Harry Horton.
Good morning, Mr Jemrick. The candidates are in a hurry, trying to cut through, cozying up to members.
I don't know what maternity row you're talking about.
But one campaign is generating more attention than the others. Kemi Badenoch spent much of the day clarifying comments she'd made about maternity pay.
I don't regret things that I didn't say, but thank you for asking. I've said maternity pay is important.
The former business secretary has been criticised by some in her party for an interview she gave at the weekend.
Statutory maternity pay, it is a function of tax. Tax comes from people who are working. We're taking from one group of people and giving to another. This, in my view, is excessive.
Do you think maternity pay is too excessive?
Look, I just disagree on that one. I'm afraid that is one area where you can draw a difference between us, because I think that we need to champion people's opportunity to support their families and to work.
Other candidates hope a quieter campaign will be more effective. But are you playing it too safe at the moment?
Well, look, this is not about entertaining you guys, okay? This is about making sure that our party is in a good place, well-structured, well-funded, and with the ideas and the leadership to get us back into the general election.
And almost 2 years after her disastrous time as Prime Minister. Why are you here, Liz Truss? Why are you at this conference? Are you really helping by being here, Liz Truss? Liz Truss, no longer an MP, but still drawing big crowds at party conference. And after a near wipeout at the election, there are many former Tory MPs in Birmingham this week.
It is actually quite lively here. And
surprisingly, perhaps?
Well, I think the thing is, this is having lost so badly, this is the time for renewal.
There is still more than a month for candidates to sell themselves to the party faithful. But will anyone outside buy it? Harry Horton, ITV News, Birmingham.
The Duke of Sussex is back in the UK tonight to attend a charity awards ceremony in London. Prince Harry is at the Well Child Awards, a charity of which he's been patron for more than 15 years. And our royal editor, Chris Shipp, is outside the event in West London. Chris, we know that this charity is very close to Harry's heart. Do you think he's going to be talking to or meeting any other senior members of the royal family?
Well, that's the key question, Mary. Well, welcome to a rather windy and some might say rather ironically named Royal Lancaster Hotel. We've just seen Prince Harry leave here, and he's going to drive out by the rear exit of the hotel and we presume back to the USA. Let's first of all deal with why he's here. He's here for the Well Child Awards. It's a unique charity. I have to say, I've been to it a number of times. I've never failed to be moved by the courage and the heroism of both the young children with life-limiting conditions and their families who support them. And that's why Harry comes back. This award happens every year at this time of year, and he keeps coming, even though, of course, he now lives in California. But of course, when he does come here, there is that question, well, who's he going to see when he's here? Now, look, it's my understanding he arrived here yesterday. We think he's on his way home now. Did he see his father, the King Charles? Well, no, he's in Scotland, so there's a geographical reason for not seeing him, perhaps. But, you know, 30 miles down the road to here is Windsor, where his brother Prince William lives. And no, he didn't see him either. So another reminder of that deep rift between the two brothers, that another trip that Harry has made to his home country. And yet again, he hasn't seen the members of his family to heal that deep division that still remains. So the award ceremony went on as usual, and I have to say, a wonderful ceremony it was. But Harry leaves here without seeing his father or brother.
Chris Shipp in West London, thank you. Music stars have been paying tribute to the Grammy Award-winning singer and actor Chris Christopherson, whose death at the age of 88 was announced today. Barbara Streisand says she knew Christopherson was something special the first time she saw him perform.
Then you came inside my life.
Streisand cast the singer for her remake of A Star Is Born back in the 1970s, and they last sang together in London 5 years ago. Fellow country star Dolly Parton described his death as a great loss, saying she will always love him. Chris Christopherson died at his home in Hawaii on Saturday, surrounded by family. And the former TV presenter Philip Schofield is back on our screens tonight. The 62-year-old has filmed the Channel 5 series Castaway, where people are marooned on an island off Madagascar. Will Tullis reports.
I've been cast away on a desert island completely on my own.
An island in the Indian Ocean is the setting for Philip Schofield's TV return.
It's my chance to tell my side of my story.
Tonight, the first of 3 episodes of Castaway airs, a Channel 5 series which sees the former ITV presenter washed up on a desert island with just a camera and his thoughts.
You know, this is such a chunk of my older life that I've just been sad, locked myself away, put myself into my own personal lockdowns.
Filmed by Schofield over the course of 10 days, viewers will see him living off the land and reflecting on a turbulent year in his professional and personal life.
I've sort of analysed my head and analysed myself, and I've analysed everything. But I know that that toxicity tank is nearly empty.
It's lovely to see you.
Yeah.
It's a far cry from the This Morning studios that made Philip Schofield such a familiar face.
We're reunited.
It's now 16 months since he left the ITV show after admitting he lied about a relationship with a much younger colleague, something he's since said he's deeply sorry for.
I'll be slammed for this. Philip Schofield, mad rant. But the thing is, I don't care anymore.
If Castaway is to be Schofield's shot at redemption, some in the industry say they hope to hear him take responsibility for his actions.
My advice to people who have stepped outside the moral code is contrition, humility and apology. I don't think sort of self-serving, self-pity is the way forward.
Philip Schofield says this will be his last TV appearance. Whether it helps rebuild his reputation could be decided over the course of these 3 episodes. Will Tullis, ITV News.
Well, coming up before Emmerdale, the cruise ship passengers stranded in Belfast who ended up falling in love.
And warnings are still in place tomorrow, but the weather is expected to improve, albeit temporarily. Full details coming up in a couple of minutes.
Well, do join me and Alex for that after this short break. We'll see you then. Well, time for the weather now, and Alex is here, and yet more weather warnings.
Absolutely, but they do expire in the coming hours, but it certainly has been a very unsettled start to the week. Let's take a quick look at the rain that came in yesterday. This was the situation in Somerset yesterday evening. We saw around 30 millimetres of rain falling on already heavily saturated ground, which led to the flooding, which you can see here. But then this heavy band of rain started to shift its way further north. And this was the situation in the northwest of England today. This was Liverpool, actually. So this road completely flooded. You can see a car submerged there nearly. And this rain has been with us throughout today. It's going to be with us into tomorrow. And that's why there is a weather warning still very much in place. There's a weather warning which expires at 8 o'clock this evening. But we're going to concentrate on this one, which does last until 3 a.m. in the morning. So there could well be some local impacts as we head through the next few hours in this area. And it is going to make tomorrow morning's rush hour quite slow indeed. But let's take a look at the bigger picture as we head through the course of this week. And we are going to see the areas of low pressure lining up But thankfully, there is going to be this area of high pressure which builds in from the north, and that's going to really settle things down for the next few days. But by the time we get to the end of the week, creeping into the weekend, yes, this area of low pressure is going to move in, so it's going to be quite a wet weekend not to look forward to. But for the details for the next couple of days, let's take a look right now.
Today, it could be pouring in many places, but not for a little while. Heinz Tomato Ketchup sponsors ITV National Weather.
Well, as we head through the course of this week, it certainly is going to be quite changeable initially. So it has been a wet start, but things settling down through the middle part of this week with brighter conditions developing, particularly for some northern parts of Britain. But as I say, rain does return for this coming weekend. As for the satellites and radar picture from a little earlier today, well, you can see just how heavy that rain has been across some northern parts, and that's why we've seen some flooding in places across the northwest. So Liverpool, Manchester seeing a very soggy afternoon indeed, and that flood water will take a little while to recede. As we head through this evening and overnight, well, you can see away from that main band of rain, it is a dry, settled situation across Scotland and Northern Ireland, so clearer skies here, also some chillier temperatures. Also south of the M4 colder, quiet conditions, dry with lows of around 9 or 10 degrees Celsius. So not too chilly at night to come. And as we start tomorrow, as I say, that rain will take a little while to clear. It will make the morning rush hour quite slow. We'll also be left with a good deal of cloud cover over many parts of the British Isles. But you can see the best spells of sunshine will be out towards western fringes of the UK, particularly western parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So do enjoy those autumn spells of sunshine. Temperatures are below average for the time of year, so we're looking at a daytime high tomorrow afternoon of around 17 degrees Celsius. That is the way it is looking this evening.
Heinz Tomato Ketchup sponsors ITV National Weather.
So you can see quite changeable, but once we get through the next couple of days, the middle part of this week, not looking too bad with that high pressure building in. So certainly some autumn sunshine to look forward to. But as I say, next weekend already not looking that great.
Oh, thanks a bunch, Alex.
You're
Great
welcome.
Stuff. Yeah. And finally tonight, after being stuck at port in Belfast for 4 long months, could the Villa v Odyssey really be about to set sail? The ship is still in dock, but we've just been told it is expected to leave within the hour as passengers begin that long-awaited round-the-world voyage. And when they do finally bid farewell to Belfast, it could be a bit of a bittersweet moment for many of them, as our correspondent Peter Smith explains.
The Villa v Odyssey promised a life of endless sunshine. 800 passengers were signed up to a forever cruise, just circumnavigating the globe again and again, so that wherever they went in the world, it would always be summer. These were the dream destinations they were sold. But this has been the reality. Engine problems meant the Odyssey never left the first port here in Belfast, and so for the last 4 months, not so sunny Northern Ireland has been home for stranded passengers.
I like this.
It's a story so unlikely that it even made it as a skit on Saturday Night Live in the US. And it's made all the more captivating by the characters like Holly, who has been stuck in hotel rooms with her 6-year-old Siamese cat, Captain.
Bye-bye, Belfast.
Who of course has his own Facebook page.
I want to take him with me. He didn't sign up to be left behind. So this is perfect for me. Wow.
And having your say now, Captain, yeah. And Captain's become quite a celebrity.
He has. Captain the Cruising Kitty on Facebook.
Do you think Captain's ready to set sail now?
Oh,
had enough?
We're all ready, honey. We are all ready to set sail.
4 months in Belfast just about, does it?
4 months and 2 days, but who's counting?
But some passengers count this delay as the best thing that ever happened to them. In the 4 months they were stranded in this city, Jeanne and Angela got the chance to spend time together, and they fell in love. They are now engaged to be married on the cruise when they finally get on board.
I heard your news and I want to wish you congratulations on us from Belfast.
This Belfast love story was the toast of the town in their local here.
Sláinte.
I believe this was definitely meant to be, and I'm so grateful for the delay.
You're grateful for the delay?
I am.
Yeah.
Even though that you were supposed to be following the sun, you ended up,
following the rain.
You should have been in the Bahamas today if the cruise had set
Correct.
schedule.
Absolutely.
Who needs the Bahamas when you've got Belfast, eh?
Right.
You know, they both start with a B. I mean, they're like sister cities.
And do you know what the Bahamas doesn't have?
That's right. Guinness.
Congratulations.
Cheers for you guys.
Thank you very much.
After 4 less than sunny months in Belfast, finally the Villa V Odyssey is just waiting for final permissions to get going tonight. Passengers are lined up to begin their journey of a lifetime, but for some, it was the unexpected delay here that was truly life-changing. And with more than 400 stops ahead, there's really no need for the happy couple to plan a honeymoon. Peter Smith, ITV News, Belfast.
Bon voyage to all of them. That's it for now. Julie's here with news at 10 from me and all the evening team. Bye-bye.